I stood in the corporate boardroom 30 minutes after walking out, watching through security cameras as checkout systems across 2,000 stores began failing simultaneously. Customers abandoned full shopping carts. Store managers frantically called IT help desks that no longer existed. The new 26-year-old COO who fired me for lacking positivity stared at his phone in horror as regional managers flooded him with panicked calls. 9 years of loyalty destroyed in one dismissive conversation. Now, the entire retail empire I built and maintained single-handedly crumbled in real time. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs months earlier. But 9 years of dedication creates a kind of blindness to betrayal. My name is Justine, and until this morning, I was the senior systems engineer responsible for keeping Hartford Retail Corporation's point-of-sale network running across every single store from Maine to California. 9 years ago, I walked into this building as a 23-year-old junior systems analyst with a computer science degree from Penn State and dreams bigger than my student loan debt. The company had just 500 stores then, and their technology infrastructure was held together with digital duct tape and prayers. William Hartford, the founder, was a genuine man in his 60s who treated every employee like family. He wore worn khakis and button-down shirts, drove a 15-year-old Honda Accord, and knew the names of every janitor and cashier. During my first week, William called me into his office. The walls were covered with photos of store openings, employee celebrations, and community events. No fancy awards or ego displays, just memories of people whose lives his business had touched. "Justine, I need someone I can trust completely," he said, leaning forward in his chair. "Our current system crashes every other Tuesday, and our IT contractor keeps promising fixes that never arrive. I want to build something reliable, something that serves our customers instead of frustrating them. Can you do that?" I spent the next 18 months working days, nights, and weekends building a point-of-sale network from the ground up. While other companies bought expensive off-the-shelf solutions, I designed custom software that integrated inventory management, customer data, and transaction processing into one seamless system. Every line of code was crafted specifically for Hartford's needs, accounting for everything from peak holiday traffic to power outages during thunderstorms. The first major test came during Black Friday, 2 years into my employment. Our competitors crashed under the volume, losing millions in sales while frustrated customers walked away. Our system handled 3 times normal traffic without a hiccup. William found me in the server room at midnight monitoring performance metrics and shook my hand with tears in his eyes. "You didn't just build a computer system," he said. "You protected thousands of jobs and millions of families who depend on us. This company exists to serve people, not the other way around." That philosophy guided everything I built. The system expanded as Hartford Retail grew, adding new stores, new features, new security protocols. By year 5, we operated in 38 states. By year 7, we had reached 2,000 locations and became the fastest-growing retail chain in American history. Every transaction, every inventory update, every customer interaction flowed through networks I designed and maintained. William trusted me with administrative access to everything: server rooms, financial systems, customer databases, executive communications. I was the only person who understood how all the pieces fit together because I had built every piece myself. When other departments requested changes or upgrades, they came to me. When the board needed technical explanations, William called me into meetings where I explained complex systems in plain English. But 2 years ago, William Hartford suffered a massive heart attack during a family vacation in Colorado. He died before the paramedics could reach him, leaving behind a company, a legacy, and a son who had spent his life studying business theory instead of learning the practical wisdom his father embodied. Bradley Hartford Jr. was 32 years old when he inherited control of the company. Unlike his father's casual warmth, Bradley wore expensive suits, carried the latest smartphone, and filled his office with modern art and technology magazines. He wasn't unkind, just overwhelmed by the responsibility of managing an empire he had never fully understood. 6 months after William's death, Bradley introduced his 24-year-old nephew, Marcus Kellerman, as the new strategic technology advisor. Marcus had graduated from an Ivy League business school and spent 2 years working for a Silicon Valley consulting firm. He spoke in buzzwords about digital transformation, cloud migration, and artificial intelligence disruption. From our first meeting, Marcus questioned everything I had built. He walked through our server rooms with a tablet, taking notes and shaking his head. He requested detailed documentation of every system, every process, every security protocol. When I explained that our custom software had achieved 99.7% uptime over 8 years, he responded that industry best practices required enterprise solutions from established vendors. "No offense, Justine, but this whole setup is pretty antiquated," Marcus said during one particularly frustrating meeting. Modern retailers use cloud-based platforms with built-in analytics and machine learning capabilities. Your homemade system might have worked for Grandpa's corner store, but we're talking about a 2,000-location enterprise here. I tried explaining that our system already incorporated predictive analytics, automated inventory optimization, and real-time fraud detection. I showed him performance metrics that outpaced every major competitor. But Marcus had already decided that anything built internally was automatically inferior to anything purchased from outside vendors. 3 months ago, Marcus presented a proposal to the board of directors. He recommended replacing our entire technology infrastructure with a new cloud-based system from a startup called TechFlow Solutions. The presentation was polished, professional, and completely divorced from operational reality. Marcus claimed that our current system posed security risks, lacked scalability, and prevented the company from achieving its digital potential. I wasn't invited to that board meeting. I learned about Marcus's presentation secondhand through worried conversations with regional managers who had received emails about upcoming system changes. When I requested permission to address the board about technical concerns, Marcus scheduled me for a presentation 3 weeks later after the preliminary vote. That presentation never happened. This morning I walked into what I thought was a routine meeting with the new COO, a woman named Sarah Chen, who had joined the company 6 months ago from a major consulting firm. Instead of discussing quarterly server maintenance, Sarah informed me that my employment was terminated effective immediately. "We're restructuring the IT department to better align with modern business practices," Sarah explained, her voice professionally detached. "Your technical skills are impressive, but frankly, your attitude has become problematic. Multiple people have reported that you're resistant to change, negative about new initiatives, and generally lacking the positive energy we need moving forward." I sat in stunned silence, trying to process what was happening. 9 years of perfect performance evaluations, countless late nights ensuring system stability, emergency repairs during holidays when everyone else was home with their families, and this was how it ended. "I've maintained 99.7% uptime for 9 years, I said, my voice steady despite the shock. "What attitude problem? We need fresh energy." Sarah shrugged. "Marcus has identified several promising candidates who can bring innovative thinking to modernize our technology approach." As I gathered my personal belongings from my office, Marcus appeared in the doorway with a satisfied smirk. He didn't say anything, just watched me pack family photos and personal books into a cardboard box. But as I walked toward the elevator, I heard him on his phone in the hallway. "Phase 1 complete. She's gone. We can move forward with the replacement system." The pieces suddenly clicked together. This wasn't about attitude or positivity. This was about removing the only person who understood the current system well enough to expose whatever Marcus was planning. I had been protecting something valuable, and now I was being eliminated so that value could be destroyed or stolen. Standing in that elevator descending from the 32nd floor for the last time, I made a decision that would change everything. If Marcus wanted to replace my system, he was welcome to try. But first, he would learn exactly what that system actually did and why William Hartford had trusted me to build it. I had 30 minutes before the first checkout terminals would start crashing. Enough time to expose the truth about who was really lacking positive energy around here. I drove home to my apartment complex in suburban Virginia, with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. 9 years of my life reduced to a cardboard box sitting in my passenger seat. But anger was quickly being replaced by a more dangerous emotion, curiosity. Marcus's phone call kept replaying in my mind. Phase 1 complete. What exactly was Phase 2? My apartment was a modest 2-bedroom place I had rented since starting at Hartford Retail. One bedroom served as my office, equipped with 3 monitors, a high-end workstation, and secure network connections that allowed me to manage emergency situations from home. William had insisted that key personnel maintain remote access capabilities, understanding that retail systems didn't conveniently break down only during business hours. I brewed a pot of coffee and began systematically reviewing 9 months of work emails, incident reports, and system logs. What I discovered made my blood run cold. Every system failure Marcus had reported to the board of directors had occurred during my absence from the office. The server crash in March happened during my long weekend visiting my college roommate in Boston. The database corruption in June occurred while I was attending my aunt's funeral in Ohio. The network outages in August took place during my first vacation in 3 years when I had finally taken time to visit my parents. This wasn't coincidence. This was sabotage with surgical precision. I pulled up administrative logs that most people didn't even know existed. Every access to our servers was recorded with timestamps, user credentials, and actions performed. During each of my absences, Marcus had used emergency administrative privileges that I had never authorized him to possess. He had deliberately caused system failures, then documented them as evidence of infrastructure obsolescence. 3 months ago, when I took my first real vacation in 2 years to care for my mother during her chemotherapy treatments, Marcus had volunteered to monitor our systems as a favor to Bradley. I remembered feeling grateful that someone was stepping up to help during a family crisis. Instead, Marcus had spent that week systematically introducing instabilities into databases that had run flawlessly for years. The server crashes the database. Corruptions, the network timeouts that Marcus presented to the board as proof of my system's inadequacy had all been artificially created. He had spent months building a false narrative about critical infrastructure failures, positioning himself as the visionary who could save the company from technological disaster. But the manipulation went deeper than simple sabotage. Marcus had also influenced how my interactions with other employees were perceived and reported. I found email chains where he subtly questioned my responses to routine technical requests, characterizing straightforward explanations as resistance to change. He had transformed my professional caution about untested modifications into evidence of negative attitude. When regional managers asked about system upgrades, I had explained the complexities involved in maintaining stability across 2,000 locations. Marcus reframed these explanations as obstructionism. When executives requested impossible timeline estimates for major overhauls, I had provided realistic assessments based on years of experience. Marcus portrayed this honesty as lack of enthusiasm for innovation. He had methodically constructed a paper trail showing me as a difficult employee who refused to embrace modern solutions. Every careful decision I made to protect system stability became evidence of my unwillingness to evolve. Every technical concern I raised about rushed implementations became proof of my negative mindset. I opened my laptop and accessed archived security footage from our server rooms. What I found confirmed my worst suspicions. During my vacation in August, Marcus had spent hours alone with our core servers, connecting external devices and running unauthorized diagnostic software. The cameras showed him photographing server configurations, copying files to portable drives, and installing equipment that wasn't part of our standard setup. He had been stealing proprietary information about our custom system while simultaneously destroying its reputation. Every piece of code I had written, every security protocol I had implemented, every optimization I had developed over 9 years was being copied for unknown purposes. I called my former mentor, David Chen, who had left Hartford Retail 6 months ago under circumstances that suddenly seemed suspicious. David had been our database administrator for 12 years, working closely with me to optimize performance and security. His resignation had been abrupt, citing better opportunities with a tech startup in Austin. "Justine, I've been wondering when you'd call," David said after I explained what had happened. "I couldn't warn you directly, but I hoped you'd figure it out before they got to you too. They're cleaning house," he continued. "Anyone who knows how the real system works is a threat to whatever they're planning." Marcus approached me 6 months ago with questions about database architecture and security protocols. He claimed he was conducting a routine assessment for optimization purposes. David explained that Marcus had pressured him to provide detailed documentation about our proprietary algorithms, backup procedures, and disaster recovery protocols. When David refused to share certain sensitive information without proper authorization, Marcus began questioning his competence in meetings with senior management. Within a month, I was being written up for minor infractions that had never been issues before. My access to certain systems was quietly restricted. New policies were implemented that made my job almost impossible to perform effectively. The writing was on the wall, so I started looking for other opportunities. The pattern was becoming clear. Marcus had been systematically removing anyone with deep knowledge of our current system while building justification for its replacement. David's departure had been voluntary, but mine was being forced through character assassination and manufactured performance issues. But why go to such elaborate lengths to replace a system that worked perfectly? The answer lay in Marcus's proposed solution, TechFlow Solutions. I had never heard of this company before Marcus's presentation, which seemed strange for a vendor promising to handle a $50 million infrastructure replacement. I spent the next 2 hours researching TechFlow Solutions online. What I found was disturbing. The company had been incorporated only 8 months ago, shortly after Marcus joined Hartford Retail. Its business address was a shared office space in Delaware. Its website featured stock photos and generic descriptions of cloud-based retail solutions, with no specific case studies or detailed technical specifications. Most suspicious of all, TechFlow Solutions' business registration listed Marcus Kellerman as a founding board member and major shareholder. He wasn't just recommending a vendor to replace our system. He was recommending his own company positioned to receive a $50 million contract funded by the infrastructure budget he had helped create through manufactured crises. The scope of the deception was staggering. Marcus had infiltrated Hartford Retail, sabotaged our technology infrastructure, eliminated knowledgeable employees, and manipulated management into believing that only his expensive solution could save the company. He was preparing to profit enormously from problems he had created deliberately. I looked at the clock on my computer screen. 22 minutes had passed since I walked out of that conference room. In 8 more minutes, the automated systems I had built would begin their scheduled maintenance cycles. Except tonight, those cycles wouldn't find the monitoring software that normally supervised the process. I had built numerous safeguards into our infrastructure over the years, but they all depended on central coordination from servers that Marcus would soon discover he couldn't access or control. Without my direct oversight, the system would detect anomalies and begin defensive shutdowns to protect data integrity. In 8 minutes, 2,000 stores would learn exactly what Marcus's fresh energy could accomplish. And tomorrow morning, the board of directors would discover what happens when you fire the only person who truly understands the technology that keeps your company alive. But first, I needed to gather evidence that would expose the full scope of Marcus's conspiracy, because simply restoring the system wouldn't be enough. I needed to ensure that this could never happen again. At exactly 6:37 p.m. Eastern Time, the first checkout terminal went offline at a Hartford Retail location in Tampa, Florida. The cashier, a college student named Amanda working her evening shift, watched her screen flicker and display an error message she had never seen before. "Network connection lost. Please contact technical support." She called her manager, who tried restarting the terminal according to standard procedures. Nothing happened. Within 3 minutes, every checkout station in the store was displaying the same message. Within 5 minutes, stores across Florida, Georgia, and Alabama were reporting identical problems. I sat in my home office monitoring the cascade failure through secure connections I had established years ago as emergency backdoors. Not for malicious purposes, but because responsible system architecture requires multiple access points when managing critical infrastructure across thousands of locations. William Hartford had not only approved these connections, he had insisted upon them after a hurricane knocked out primary communications to our Gulf Coast stores in my 3rd year. My phone buzzed with the first panicked call from Regional Manager Patricia Wells in Atlanta. "Justine, thank God you answered. Every store in the Southeast is down. Customers are abandoning full shopping carts. We're talking about millions of dollars in lost sales if this isn't fixed immediately. I'm not employed by Hartford Retail anymore, Patricia. You'll need to contact the new IT department." "What new IT department?" Marcus told us to call you for any technical emergencies. The irony was bitter. Marcus had fired me without arranging alternative support for the system he planned to replace. He had assumed that removing me would simply clear the way for his implementation timeline without considering what would happen to ongoing operations. I watched my monitoring dashboard as the failure spread westward like a digital plague. Stores in Tennessee, Kentucky, and Missouri began reporting checkout problems. The system wasn't crashing randomly. It was failing in a precise sequence as automated maintenance routines encountered missing supervisory software. Every night at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, our point-of-sale network performed routine maintenance tasks, backing up daily transaction data, updating inventory counts, synchronizing promotional pricing, and clearing temporary files. These operations required coordination between individual store terminals and central servers. Without monitoring software to supervise the process, terminals would detect communication errors and enter protective mode to prevent data corruption. I had designed this fail-safe behavior deliberately. Better to shut down temporarily than to risk losing customer information or financial records. But I had never imagined a scenario where the monitoring software would be missing because the person responsible for maintaining it had been fired without warning. My phone rang constantly as regional managers across the country discovered that their stores were becoming inoperable. But the calls weren't just about technical problems. Store managers were describing scenes of chaos as customers grew frustrated with non-functioning checkout systems. In Phoenix, Arizona, a mother with 2 crying children abandoned a cart full of groceries and baby supplies after waiting 20 minutes in line. In Detroit, Michigan, elderly customers who had spent an hour shopping for prescription medications couldn't complete their purchases. In Sacramento, California, teenagers who had saved money for back-to-school clothes found themselves unable to buy anything. These weren't just system failures. They were human tragedies multiplied across 2,000 locations, affecting millions of people who depended on Hartford Retail for their daily needs. The technical problem I had created in anger was causing real hardship for innocent families. But as I monitored data flows from Marcus's proposed replacement infrastructure, I discovered something far more sinister than simple corporate nepotism. TechFlow Solutions' emergency backup system, which Marcus was frantically trying to activate, wasn't designed to replace our point-of-sale functionality. It was designed to intercept and copy it. Hidden within the software were data collection routines that would capture every customer credit card number, every personal identification detail, every purchase history record that flowed through our network. This wasn't just about Marcus stealing a $50 million contract. He was positioning himself to steal the personal financial information of millions of customers. The malware, disguised as a retail solution, would harvest credit card data, social security numbers, phone numbers, addresses, and purchasing patterns for purposes that had nothing to do with legitimate business operations. I traced the data transmission pathways embedded in Marcus's software and discovered connections to servers located in countries with minimal cybercrime enforcement. The stolen information would be packaged and sold to identity theft rings, fraudulent credit card operations, and organized crime networks specializing in financial fraud. Marcus hadn't just infiltrated Hartford Retail to profit from an overpriced technology contract. He had orchestrated an elaborate scheme to transform our retail network into a massive data harvesting operation that would victimize every customer who shopped at our stores. The scope of the planned crime was breathtaking. With access to real-time transaction data from 2,000 locations, Marcus could monitor spending patterns, predict when customers would make major purchases, and time identity theft attacks for maximum financial impact. He could sell customer profiles to loan sharks, blackmailers, and stalkers who specialized in targeting vulnerable individuals. But there was more. As I analyzed the malware's code structure, I found embedded cryptocurrency mining software that would use our store computers to generate digital currency for Marcus's offshore accounts. Every checkout terminal would become part of an illegal mining operation, slowing customer service while generating passive income for criminal enterprises. The system would also install backdoors, allowing remote access to store security systems, employee payroll databases, and executive communications. Marcus would gain the ability to spy on board meetings, steal competitive intelligence, and manipulate company decisions from behind the scenes. This wasn't corporate sabotage. This was a sophisticated criminal operation designed to transform Hartford Retail into an unwitting partner in massive financial fraud while destroying the company's reputation and customer trust. I stared at my computer screen, watching stores across the country go dark, while Marcus's malware waited in the wings like a digital predator. The choice facing me was no longer about personal revenge or professional vindication. It was about protecting millions of innocent people from becoming victims of organized cybercrime. The moral calculus was clear, but the practical challenge was enormous. I needed to expose Marcus's conspiracy while restoring system functionality, but doing so would require evidence that could hold up in federal court. I needed law enforcement assistance, but convincing them would take time that crash-prone stores and desperate customers didn't have. My phone rang again. This time the caller ID showed Bradley Hartford Jr. "Justine, I know what happened today was wrong." Bradley's voice was shaky with stress. "I need your help. The entire company is falling apart and I don't understand what's going on." I took a deep breath, realizing that this crisis had created an opportunity to save both Hartford Retail and its customers from a fate worse than system crashes. But first, Bradley would need to hear some very uncomfortable truths about the people he had trusted to run his father's company. Bradley Hartford Jr. arrived at my apartment complex at 11:47 p.m. driving his father's old Honda Accord instead of his usual luxury sedan. I watched from my window as he sat in the parking lot for several minutes, clearly struggling with the decision to ask for help from the employee his management team had fired 12 hours earlier. When he finally knocked on my door, Bradley looked like he had aged 10 years since morning. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his tie loosened, and his normally perfect hair disheveled from running his hands through it. The confident executive facade had cracked, revealing a frightened young man overwhelmed by responsibilities he never wanted.
"Justine, I owe you an enormous apology,"
he began before I could invite him inside.
"I had no idea Sarah and Marcus were planning to fire you. I thought you were taking a personal day when you weren't in the office."
I led him to my living room where my laptop displayed real-time monitoring of the system crisis. Bradley stared at the dashboard showing 2,000 red indicators representing failed stores across the country.
"The board is meeting an emergency session at 6 a.m., he continued. 3 directors have already called for my resignation.
The stock price dropped 32% in after-hours trading. Insurance companies are threatening to drop our coverage. We're looking at bankruptcy if this isn't resolved by tomorrow afternoon." Bradley explained that he had spent the evening fielding phone calls from panicked regional managers, furious customers, and concerned investors. Local news stations were running stories about the mysterious retail chain failure. Social media platforms buzzed with conspiracy theories and customer complaints. Consumer advocacy groups were demanding investigations into data security practices. Marcus keeps telling me that his replacement system can fix everything, but when I ask specific questions about implementation timelines, he gets vague and defensive. He says we need to trust his expertise and approve emergency funding for accelerated deployment. I turned my laptop screen toward Bradley and showed him the malware analysis I had been conducting. His face went pale as I explained what TechFlow Solutions software was actually designed to accomplish. "Marcus isn't trying to save the company," I said carefully. "He's trying to steal from it, and from every customer who shops at our stores." For the next hour, I walked Bradley through months of evidence showing how Marcus had systematically sabotaged our infrastructure while building justification for his criminal replacement system. I showed him the fabricated incident reports, the unauthorized server access logs, the offshore financial connections, and the hidden malware functionality. Bradley listened in stunned silence, occasionally asking technical questions that revealed he was beginning to understand the scope of the conspiracy. His father had always encouraged him to focus on business strategy rather than operational details, but now that strategic approach was preventing him from recognizing a sophisticated con game. "I've been trying to honor Dad's legacy by trusting the people he would have trusted," Bradley said quietly. "But Dad never had to deal with anyone like Marcus. He lived in a world where handshake agreements meant something and family loyalty was real." I felt a surge of empathy for Bradley's position. He had inherited a company built on genuine relationships and honest dealing, only to discover that modern corporate culture included predators who specialized in exploiting trust and manipulating good intentions.
"There's something else you need to know,"
Bradley continued, his voice barely above a whisper.
"I've been secretly investigating Marcus for the past month. I didn't have technical expertise to prove anything, but I knew something wasn't right."
Bradley revealed that his father had spoken to him during his final hospital visit in Colorado, sharing concerns about future challenges the company might face. William Hartford had specifically mentioned the importance of protecting key employees like me from corporate politics and external pressures. "Dad told me that if anything ever happened to him, I should trust you above anyone else in the company. He said you understood the soul of what he built, not just the technology.
I should have listened. Bradley had begun noticing inconsistencies in Marcus's reports several weeks ago. Financial discrepancies that suggested inflated consulting fees, technical recommendations that seemed unnecessarily expensive, board presentations that didn't match feedback from store managers and regional directors. His investigation had uncovered offshore bank accounts in Marcus's name, business relationships with questionable technology vendors, and communication patterns suggesting coordination with outside parties. But without technical expertise to understand the deeper implications, Bradley had been unable to build a case strong enough to challenge Marcus directly. The board members who hired Marcus are threatening to replace me if I question his recommendations, Bradley explained. They think I'm too emotional about preserving Dad's legacy instead of embracing modern business practices. The political dynamics were becoming clear. Marcus had cultivated relationships with board members who were already skeptical of Bradley's leadership capabilities. By positioning himself as a voice of technological sophistication and strategic thinking, Marcus had gained influence that extended far beyond his official role. Several board members had substantial financial investments in technology companies that would benefit from Hartford Retail's digital transformation. Others had consulting relationships with firms that specialized in corporate modernization projects. Marcus had exploited these existing interests to build support for his proposals while marginalizing anyone who questioned his methods. If the emergency board meeting goes badly tomorrow, I'll be replaced as CEO, Bradley said. Marcus will have free rein to implement whatever system he wants, and there won't be anyone left who understands what Dad actually built here. The 24-hour deadline wasn't just about fixing technical problems. It was about preventing a complete corporate takeover that would transform Hartford Retail from a family business serving communities into a criminal enterprise exploiting customers. I looked at Bradley and saw something I hadn't expected: genuine remorse and determination to do the right thing regardless of personal cost. He had made serious mistakes by trusting the wrong people, but he was willing to risk everything to protect his father's legacy and the employees who depended on the company. I have a plan, I told him, but it's going to require you to be stronger tomorrow than you've ever been in your life. Marcus isn't going to give up easily, and the board members supporting him have their own reasons for wanting this conspiracy to succeed. Bradley nodded, straightening his shoulders with resolve I hadn't seen from him before. Tell me what we need to do. For the next 3 hours, we developed a strategy that would expose Marcus's conspiracy while protecting customer data and restoring system functionality. It would require precise timing, technical expertise, and the kind of courage that transforms frightened inheritors into genuine leaders. But first we needed to contact the FBI, because what Marcus had planned wasn't just corporate fraud, it was a federal cybercrime that could affect millions of innocent Americans. And stopping it would require more than just technical solutions. As dawn approached, Bradley and I prepared for the most important board meeting in Hartford Retail's history. The future of the company, the safety of its customers, and the integrity of the digital systems that increasingly govern modern life all depended on what happened in the next few hours. At 3:45 a.m., Bradley and I sat in an all-night diner near FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C., waiting for Special Agent Rebecca Martinez to arrive. Bradley had used his corporate connections to arrange an emergency meeting emphasizing the national security implications of the cybercrime we had uncovered. Agent Martinez was a 15-year veteran of the Bureau's cybercrime division, specializing in financial fraud and identity theft operations. She listened intently as I presented technical evidence of Marcus's malware and explained the scope of the planned data harvesting operation. This is sophisticated stuff, Agent Martinez said, reviewing code samples on my laptop. The cryptocurrency mining component alone constitutes federal wire fraud. The identity theft infrastructure suggests connections to international organized crime. We're talking about potential RICO violations. But there was a problem. Federal investigations move slowly, requiring warrants, evidence verification, and interagency coordination. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 6 a.m., just 2 hours away. If Marcus succeeded in gaining approval for his system implementation, the window for preventing the crime would close rapidly.
"We can't arrest him based on planning to commit crimes,"
Agent Martinez explained.
"We need evidence of actual criminal activity.
If he activates this malware and begins stealing customer data, then we have grounds for immediate action." The legal reality created a tactical dilemma. To build a prosecutable case against Marcus, we needed to allow him to implement his system and begin the actual theft operation. But doing so would expose millions of customers to identity theft and financial fraud while we gathered evidence.
"There's another approach," I suggested.
What if we turn his own system against him, use the malware to document his criminal intentions while protecting customer data?
Agent Martinez was intrigued but cautious.
"Explain how that would work."
I outlined my plan.
Marcus's malware included remote monitoring capabilities designed to allow him to observe and control the data theft operation from outside locations. I could exploit those same capabilities to record his activities, document his criminal intent, and trace his connections to offshore criminal networks. The technical approach would require me to appear to cooperate with Marcus's system implementation while actually modifying the malware to serve law enforcement purposes. Instead of stealing customer data, the modified software would create detailed logs of Marcus's access patterns, communication protocols, and data transmission attempts.
"It's essentially a digital sting operation," I explained.
We let Marcus think his plan is working while gathering evidence that would support federal prosecution for conspiracy fraud and cybercrime.
Agent Martinez consulted with supervisors at FBI headquarters
and received authorization for the operation. Bureau technicians would monitor our activities remotely, ready to preserve evidence and coordinate arrests once sufficient criminal activity had been documented. But the most dangerous part of the plan would take place during the board meeting itself. Marcus would need to believe that his conspiracy had succeeded while I gathered evidence of his criminal intentions. Any suspicious behavior could alert him to abort the operation and destroy evidence.
Bradley and I arrived at Hartford Retail headquarters at 5:30 a.m., using his executive access to enter through private elevators that bypassed normal security checkpoints.
The 32nd floor conference room was already prepared for the emergency meeting with presentation equipment and financial documents arranged for what would likely be the most consequential board session in company history.
Marcus arrived 15 minutes early carrying multiple laptops and external drives containing his TechFlow Solutions implementation package.
He looked confident and well-rested, apparently unaware that his entire conspiracy was about to collapse around him.
"Bradley, I'm glad you came to your senses about bringing Justine back,"
Marcus said with false warmth. "We're going to need experienced technical support during the transition period."
I smiled and nodded, playing the role of a grateful employee who had been recalled to help with the crisis her firing had created.
Meanwhile, I was using my laptop to access the hidden monitoring systems I had built into our original infrastructure, preparing to document everything Marcus was about to attempt.
The board members arrived promptly at 6 a.m., looking grim and businesslike.
Several had clearly been awake most of the night dealing with crisis management calls from investors, partners, and regulatory agencies. The mood was tense and urgent, exactly what Marcus needed to push through his emergency implementation plan.
"Ladies and gentlemen, we're facing an unprecedented crisis,"
Marcus began his presentation.
"The complete failure of our outdated technology infrastructure threatens the very survival of this company. However, I have a solution that can restore operations within hours and position us for long-term success."
Marcus's PowerPoint presentation was masterful, combining technical diagrams, financial projections, and timeline estimates that painted his TechFlow Solutions system as the only viable option for immediate recovery. He avoided mentioning specific technical details that might raise questions, instead focusing on business benefits and competitive advantages. The emergency implementation will require significant upfront investment, Marcus continued, but the alternative is certain bankruptcy within 48 hours. Several board members asked pointed questions about costs, timelines, and technical specifications. Marcus deflected most concerns by emphasizing the urgency of the situation and the lack of alternative options. But I noticed that he avoided providing specific answers about data security system architecture or ongoing maintenance requirements. I need a clear vote from this board, Marcus said, building toward his climax. Full authorization to implement TechFlow solutions across all stores with emergency funding approval and executive authority to override any technical objections. This was the moment we had been waiting for. If the board approved Marcus's proposal, he would begin activating the malware system while believing his conspiracy had succeeded. Agent Martinez and her team would have grounds for immediate arrest based on attempted implementation of criminal software. But first, I needed to spring the trap I had been preparing for the past 3 hours. I stood up from my position at the conference table and walked to the presentation screen connecting my laptop to the display system. Before we proceed with this vote, I think the board should understand exactly what TechFlow Solutions is actually designed to accomplish. Marcus's confident expression flickered for the first time as I began displaying the malware analysis I had conducted during the night. Real-time code samples, data flow diagrams, and network architecture schematics filled the screen, revealing the hidden criminal functionality embedded in his proposed solution. This isn't a point-of-sale system, I announced to the stunned board members. It's identity theft software designed to steal customer financial information and transmit it to offshore criminal networks. Marcus's face went white as he realized that his entire conspiracy had been exposed. But rather than admit defeat, he made a desperate decision that would seal his fate forever. You're lying, he said, reaching for his laptop. I'll prove these allegations are false by activating the system right now. What Marcus didn't know was that I had been hoping he would make exactly that choice, because the moment he began implementing his criminal software, everything he did would be recorded by FBI monitoring equipment and admissible as evidence in federal court. Agent Martinez had been waiting in the building's lobby since 5:45 a.m., ready to make arrests the moment Marcus crossed the line from conspiracy to attempted cybercrime. And Bradley had finally found the courage to stand up for the values his father had taught him, regardless of what it cost his own corporate position. The final confrontation was about to begin, and Marcus was about to learn that some systems are designed to protect more than just data. Marcus's fingers flew across his laptop keyboard as he attempted to activate the TechFlow Solutions implementation from the boardroom conference table. His confidence had returned now that he believed he could discredit my accusations with a live demonstration of his system's capabilities. I'll show you exactly how this technology works, Marcus declared to the assembled board members. Real-time activation across all 2,000 stores, immediate restoration of checkout functionality, and advanced analytics that will revolutionize our customer intelligence capabilities. What Marcus didn't realize was that every keystroke, every mouse click, every network connection he initiated was being monitored and recorded by FBI surveillance equipment. Agent Martinez had coordinated with bureau technicians to establish monitoring stations throughout the building, creating a comprehensive digital net around Marcus's activities. On the conference room's main display screen, Marcus's system dashboard came online showing a map of the United States with indicators for every Hartford Retail location. Green lights began appearing across the country as his malware made contact with store networks preparing to begin the customer data harvesting operation. You see, Marcus said triumphantly,
Full network connectivity restored. Checkout systems coming online. Crisis resolved. But I was watching different indicators on my own laptop screen. The hidden monitoring protocols I had embedded in our original infrastructure were documenting every aspect of Marcus's criminal software activation. Data transmission pathways to offshore servers, cryptocurrency mining initialization sequences, and backdoor installation routines were all being captured in real time. Board member Patricia Williams, a former federal prosecutor, was studying the technical evidence I had presented with growing alarm. Marcus, these code samples suggest your system is designed to steal customer credit card information. Can you explain these data collection routines? Marcus deflected the question with corporate jargon about advanced analytics and customer intelligence platforms, but his explanations were becoming increasingly frantic as he realized the board was beginning to understand the true nature of his software. Every modern retail system includes data optimization features, Marcus insisted. We're simply leveraging customer information to improve service delivery and enhance the shopping experience. By transmitting social security numbers to servers in countries that don't prosecute cybercrime, I asked, pointing to specific network traffic patterns displayed on the conference room screen. Marcus made his fatal mistake. Instead of attempting to explain or justify the suspicious data flows, he tried to delete the evidence by activating what he believed was a secure wipe protocol built into his system. But the deletion commands he initiated were actually triggering FBI logging routines that I had substituted for his original software. Every file Marcus attempted to destroy was instead being copied to secure bureau servers as evidence of obstruction of justice and criminal conspiracy. His efforts to cover up the crime were creating an even more detailed record of his criminal intentions. The conference room doors opened and Agent Martinez entered with a team of federal agents carrying arrest warrants and computer seizure orders. The timing was perfect. Marcus had just finished activating every component of his criminal software while believing he was deleting evidence of its existence. Marcus Kellerman, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, identity theft, money laundering, and violations of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, Agent Martinez announced as agents moved to secure his computers and external drives. Marcus's face cycled through disbelief, anger, and panic as he realized the scope of the trap that had been prepared for him. This is entrapment. You manipulated me into activating software that you modified without my knowledge. Actually, we didn't modify anything, I replied calmly. We simply monitored the criminal software you designed and documented your attempts to use it for illegal purposes. Everything you activated this morning was built by you for criminal purposes you planned and implemented. As Marcus was led away in handcuffs, Agent Martinez addressed the board members about the ongoing investigation. 3 board directors who had been receiving financial kickbacks from TechFlow Solutions were also placed under arrest for conspiracy and bribery. Their investments in Marcus's offshore ventures and their votes to approve his proposals, despite obvious red flags, constituted federal crimes. But the most satisfying moment came when I turned my attention back to the system restoration process. Within 30 minutes of Marcus's arrest, I began reactivating the legitimate point-of-sale infrastructure that had served Hartford Retail faithfully for 9 years. Store by store, region by region, checkout terminals across the country came back online with full functionality restored. Customer transactions resumed, inventory systems synchronized, and the digital heartbeat of the company returned to its normal, reliable rhythm. The board members who remained after the arrests watched in amazement as performance metrics displayed perfect system stability across all 2,000 locations. No data loss, no security breaches, no functionality compromises. The infrastructure they had been convinced was obsolete and unreliable performed exactly as it had been designed to perform. Bradley Hartford Jr. stood at the head of the conference table looking more like his father than I had ever seen him.
The crisis had forced him to find reserves of strength and leadership that he hadn't known he possessed. Effective immediately, Justine is promoted to Chief Technology Officer with full authority over all technical operations and infrastructure decisions, Bradley announced to the remaining board members. Anyone who has concerns about this decision is welcome to submit their resignation. No one objected. The morning's events had demonstrated beyond any doubt that the company's survival depended on technical expertise, ethical leadership, and the kind of long-term thinking that prioritizes customer service over quick profits. As FBI agents continued their evidence collection and the remaining board members discussed damage control strategies, I sat quietly at my laptop monitoring system performance across our nationwide network. Every indicator showed green. Every transaction processed normally. Every customer interaction proceeded smoothly. The revenge I had imagined 12 hours earlier had evolved into something far more meaningful: justice served, crimes prevented, and a company saved from destruction by people who had finally learned to recognize the difference between genuine expertise and sophisticated con artistry. Marcus Kellerman's attempt to steal millions of dollars and destroy thousands of jobs had failed completely. But more importantly, millions of Hartford Retail customers would continue shopping safely, unaware that their personal information had been protected by systems built with integrity and maintained with dedication. The crisis was over, but the real work of rebuilding trust and implementing ethical technology practices was just beginning. And for the first time in 9 years, I had the authority and support necessary to do that work properly. 3 months later, I stood in the newly renovated server room on the 31st floor of Hartford Retail headquarters, watching my team of 12 engineers implement the most comprehensive cybersecurity upgrade in the company's history. Not because our original system was inadequate, but because we now had the resources and leadership support to implement protections I had only dreamed about during the years when budget constraints limited our capabilities. The transformation had been remarkable in every sense. Marcus Kellerman was serving a 15-year federal sentence for cybercrime conspiracy and money laundering. The 3 corrupted board members faced similar penalties for their roles in the conspiracy. The FBI investigation had uncovered connections to international identity theft rings that led to dozens of additional arrests across multiple countries. Bradley Hartford Jr. had evolved from an overwhelmed inheritor into a confident leader who understood that his father's values were perfectly compatible with modern business success. The company's stock price had reached record highs as investors recognized the stability and security that came from ethical management and genuine technical expertise. But the most meaningful changes were happening at the human level. Our new corporate culture valued substance over superficial positivity, rewarded long-term thinking over quick fixes, and promoted people based on competence rather than political connections. My engineering team reflected this new approach. Sarah Kim, a brilliant database architect from Carnegie Mellon, had joined us after leaving a Silicon Valley company that valued flashy presentations over reliable code. James Rodriguez, a network security expert with military experience, brought defensive thinking that had prevented 3 attempted cyber attacks in his first month. Lisa Chen, a former federal cybercrime prosecutor, served as our new legal compliance officer, ensuring that every system we built met the highest standards for customer privacy protection. Her background provided exactly the kind of expertise needed to navigate the complex regulatory environment that governed modern retail technology. Each team member brought unique perspectives and specialized skills, but they all shared a commitment to building technology that served people rather than exploiting them. We had created an environment where technical excellence was rewarded, ethical concerns were taken seriously, and long-term stability took precedence over short-term profits. The customer response had been overwhelmingly positive. Once news broke about how we had prevented the massive identity theft operation, consumer advocacy groups praised Hartford Retail as a model for responsible corporate behavior. Customer loyalty increased dramatically as people recognized that their personal information was genuinely protected by people who understood the value of trust. Regional managers reported that store traffic had increased by 18% since the crisis, with customers specifically choosing Hartford Retail over competitors because of our demonstrated commitment to data security and customer protection. The attempted crime had inadvertently created a competitive advantage that no marketing campaign could have achieved. But perhaps the most satisfying development was the industry recognition that followed. Technology conferences invited me to speak about ethical system design. Computer science programs requested case studies of our security architecture for educational purposes. Other retail companies sought consulting advice about implementing similar protective measures. I had become an advocate for the principle that technical expertise carries moral responsibilities. The people who build digital systems have obligations to consider how those systems might be misused and to implement protections that prioritize human welfare over operational efficiency. My office walls were now decorated with photos from store opening ceremonies, employee recognition events, and community technology education programs that Hartford Retail sponsored in underserved neighborhoods. These images reminded me daily that technology decisions affect real people in real communities, not just abstract business metrics. The server room hummed with the quiet efficiency that had always characterized well-designed systems. Every component functioned exactly as intended. Every security protocol operated flawlessly, and every customer transaction processed with the reliability that William Hartford had envisioned when he first asked me to build something trustworthy. Bradley had framed his father's final words to him and hung them in the conference room where the crisis had reached its climax. Technology serves people, not the other way around. Those words had become our unofficial company motto, guiding every decision about system upgrades, security implementations, and customer service policies. Standing in that server room surrounded by equipment that protected millions of customers and supported thousands of employees, I understood that genuine job security comes not from making yourself indispensable, but from building systems and relationships based on integrity and competence. The revenge fantasy I had entertained during those first angry hours after being fired had been replaced by something far more valuable: the satisfaction of knowing that my work protected innocent people from sophisticated criminals who specialized in exploiting trust and manipulating technology for harmful purposes. Marcus Kellerman had taught me that the greatest threat to ethical technology wasn't technical failure. It was human corruption disguised as innovation. But he had also demonstrated that such corruption could be defeated by people willing to prioritize principles over profits, expertise over politics, and long-term relationships over short-term advantages. My phone buzzed with a text message from Agent Martinez. "Final sentencing hearing next week. Your testimony was crucial. Thanks for helping us take down a major cybercrime operation." The FBI investigation had expanded far beyond Hartford Retail, ultimately dismantling an international network of corporate infiltrators who specialized in stealing customer data from retail chains across multiple countries. As I prepared to leave the office that evening, I reflected on how different my life had become since that morning when I walked out of a conference room believing my career was over. Being fired for lacking positivity had led me to discover reserves of strength and purpose I hadn't known I possessed. The lesson wasn't about the power of technical expertise or the importance of professional loyalty. It was about the courage required to stand up for principles when doing so costs everything you think you want, and the deeper satisfaction that comes from protecting something more valuable than personal advancement. True strength isn't about maintaining endless positivity in the face of injustice. It's about having the wisdom to recognize when systems and relationships have been corrupted and the determination to rebuild them according to values that prioritize human welfare over individual gain. To everyone listening to this story, I want you to think about the systems and institutions in your own life. When you see something that doesn't seem right, when you notice that competent people are being marginalized for questioning problematic practices, when you encounter pressure to stay positive instead of addressing legitimate concerns, remember that silence in the face of corruption makes you complicit in its success. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where standing up for what's right required risking something important to you? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else find the courage to do the right thing when it matters most. If this story resonated with you, please like this video to help others find it. Subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength in difficult situations. And share this with someone who might need to know that integrity and expertise can triumph over corruption and manipulation even when the odds seem impossible. Thank you for listening, and remember that the most important technology we can build is the courage to protect what matters most. Take care of yourselves, and never let anyone convince you that positivity means accepting injustice.